Hey, have you been drinking again? This is the third time this week.
When I think about coming home to an old hag like you, it tires me out. I can't stand it unless I drink.
It's been every weekend recently, and now it's even on weekdays.
Men have social obligations, you know.
I'm working too, you know. Once in a while, you could come home early. And at least talk to our son, Kevin.
I don't care. Taking care of the kid is a wife's job.
These days, this seems to be the only conversation I have with my husband. 12 years into marriage. And I'm still dealing with my husband's wasteful spending habits every day. My name is Catherine, 36 years old. Even after getting married, I continued working. My husband is 2 years older than me. So naturally, since we are aging together after marriage, if he calls me an old hag, I can't help but think, isn't he an old geezer too? But even if I retort the same way, it would only result in a quarrel. So, I choose not to, but we always end up disagreeing on issues related to money or our child. The company we work for is quite large, and has solid maternity and paternity leave systems in place. So, returning to work after childbirth was smooth and I have no complaints about my job. My husband also works at the same company, but since our departments changed, after I returned from leave, we hardly ever meet in the office. Currently, my husband is in sales and I'm in HR. So, I understand that he has more obligations and often can't leave work on time. But still, I can't help but feel. My husband has never done the preschool drop-off and pick-up, not even once. Hey, couldn't you at least pick up our child once in a while?
That's your job, isn't it? Besides, I never wanted a child in the first place.
Our child is already born. It's pointless to say such things now.
They said that seeing the child's face after birth would make them seem cute. But that's a lie. I don't find them cute at all. They aren't even attached to me.
That's because you never play with them. You always pretend not to notice. When Kevin tries to talk to you,
I want to relax on my days off too. I can't be bothered to deal with a child.
Our only son, Kevin, entered 4th grade this year. He's at an age where he understands a lot. Our son must have noticed his father's indifference towards him. My husband used to talk to him when he was little, but his responses were always dismissive.
Dad, you know what?
What is it? I'm watching TV right now. Don't bother me.
I'm sorry.
Hey, that's no way to talk.
Shut up. I'm tired from work every day. Unlike your HR job. Sales require an incredible amount of consideration. Don't bother me on my day off.
This is how it always goes. My husband is completely hands-off when it comes to school events and parenting. He has never attended a school observation day or sports festival. It feels like we are a single-parent family. Our son has stopped initiating conversation with his father. Moreover, my husband never buys anything for our child, yet he spends recklessly on himself. So, naturally, my dissatisfaction with him just keeps growing. I don't want to nag him, but I find myself doing it anyway. There is a reason for this. When our child turned 3, I found out about my husband's debt. Since we both worked, we split living expenses in half. Therefore, I didn't know how my husband managed his salary. But after our child was born, our living expenses increased. As expected, our individual contributions increased as well. We had decided to deposit a set amount into a shared bank account for living expenses. Even though we only increased the amount by $200 compared to before our child was born, my husband often failed to deposit the money on the designated day. When I confronted him, I found out he had a debt from before our marriage. Moreover, the remaining balance was close to $30,000. When I asked what he had spent it on, how much he was paying monthly, and when he planned to pay it off, he just gave a vague smile and said it seemed like it would never end.
Well, I'm using a revolving payment system, so even if I make payments, the total amount doesn't decrease at all.
What? For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what he was saying. Essentially, he was spending more than his monthly payments. But because everything was put on revolving payments, the amount he had to pay remained the same. So for several years, the balance wasn't decreasing, it was actually increasing. I was infuriated at his lack of planning. I felt sorry for him, because it seemed he didn't even realize he was a father. To prevent further reckless spending, I had all his credit cards stopped. He grumbled a lot, but I explained fervently that we couldn't afford any more debt. Eventually, I managed to convince him not to use them. It was a debt incurred for his luxuries, not for the family. It's only natural for an adult to handle their own mess. However, because we wanted to repay it as soon as possible, we increased the monthly payment, which resulted in me covering most of the living expenses. 7 years have passed since then, and even though the payments have long since been completed, the amount of living expenses my husband contributes is still less than before. When I asked him to increase the living expenses, he refused, using the reason,
You earn more.
he insists that the one who earns more should contribute more. As if it's a matter of course in a family. His sales performance is not very good. He's always grumbling because his peers are progressing faster than him. So he's not dedicated to his job. That's why he's not getting promoted. 2 years ago, I was promoted to the head of the HR department. As a result, my salary is higher than my husband's, which he's not pleased about. I tried various ways to motivate him and even offered advice. But he didn't seem to appreciate that either.
What do you know about sales? Don't interfere unnecessarily.
With that, he wouldn't listen to anything I had to say. He would only argue, no matter what I said. Gradually, I got tired of it and stopped trying so hard to speak up. Then, one day, my husband announced he was going back to his hometown for a high school reunion. Even though he said he was going back, both of his parents had already passed away. And his elder brother and his wife lived in the family home. My husband and his brother-in-law don't get along well and have no interaction. The dispute over inheritance occurred when my father-in-law passed away 5 years ago. My brother-in-law and his wife had been taking care of my mother-in-law, who had required care for many years. My husband didn't lift a finger. Despite feeling guilty, I couldn't help out much due to my job, and since the birth of our child, I was basically managing things single-handedly. As a result, I could hardly show my face at my in-laws' house. And my mother-in-law passed away 3 years before my father-in-law. It was a year before my husband's debt came to light. So, it seems that my father-in-law left a will leaving all his property to my brother-in-law and his wife. I thought it was only fair, and I told my husband it was fine. But he wasn't satisfied with that and made an outrageous claim. Eventually, it was settled that he would receive the reserved portion of the inheritance. But my brother-in-law was upset with my husband's attitude at the time. He told my husband that he would give him the reserved portion, but wanted nothing to do with him in the future. Knowing all this, I don't have the face to meet my brother-in-law and his wife. So I haven't contacted them at all since my father-in-law passed away. My husband used the money he received at that time to pay off the remaining debt. It turned out then that while he had said he couldn't put in living expenses because he was increasing the revolving payments, more than half the balance was still remaining. The claim of increasing the amount was a downright lie. He was just using the pretense of increasing the payments to avoid contributing to the living expenses, and instead using the money for his own entertainment. It was a ridiculous situation. When I complained, asking what was going on,
In the end, it was settled. So what's the problem? All this happened because you stopped my card and decreased the money I could use. I have no choice but to take the difference from the living expenses.
he said brazenly. Because of all this, I've been cut off from my brother-in-law. So even though he said he was going home, he shouldn't be able to stay at his family home. When I asked him where he was staying, he said he had booked a business hotel in front of the station. I thought it was rather sad that he was going back to his hometown. But he couldn't even show his face at the house where he was born and raised. I didn't say anything about it and just saw him off.
Dad is not coming home today.
Yeah, that's right. While I was seeing off my husband, who was cheerfully leaving, my son called out from behind. Moreover, he seemed somewhat happy knowing that his father wasn't coming home. I once again felt that for my son, his father was not a presence he wanted around. And I realized that I felt the same way. Today is Saturday, and I'm off from work, so why don't we go somewhere? Just the two of us, and eat out tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
Yay.
I began to think more and more that I should seriously consider the future. If I felt relieved that my husband wasn't around. But after the day of that reunion, my husband's outings clearly increased. Especially on holidays, he was often out and stayed out overnight. He was strangely in a good mood and carried his cell phone, which he used to leave on the table, everywhere. It seemed he even brought it into the bathroom. No matter how you look at it, it's suspicious. Hey, haven't you been going out a lot recently? Where on earth are you going?
I've been thinking about working out a bit, so I go to the gym on my days off. Once you hit your late 30s, your physical strength starts to decline.
Oh, is that so? Do gyms have accommodation facilities?
And no, not like that, but when I drink with friends on the way home, it becomes morning. When I'm feeling good, the drinks keep flowing.
I see. Are you working out to play sports with Kevin?
Yes, that's also possible.
His eyes are darting around, looking at him with a cold eye, thinking he could at least lie more skillfully. I was certain of my husband's infidelity in my mind. I could have hired a detective agency, but for now, I followed him on the days he went out. He got on the train and got off at the station where his parents' house was. At the station, a young woman was waiting in a car, and he happily got into the car. Since his behavior had changed since the reunion, I thought the other person was a former classmate. But the current woman looked clearly in her 20s, so it didn't seem that way. Still, I thought, he wastes money, he doesn't take care of the child, and on top of all that, an affair. I felt foolish for staying with him. I decided to break up with my husband and started preparing for it.
Well, I'm going. I might stay at a friend's house tonight.
Okay. Take care. I thought it was a perfect opportunity. But just then, it was discovered that my credit card was missing from my wallet. I remember it being in my wallet until yesterday. I hadn't taken it out, so I didn't think I'd lost it somewhere. I immediately contacted the card company and reported it lost. When asked when I last used it, I couldn't remember. it had been a while. I had kept a record of my statement on my computer, so I checked that and answered. And fortunately, it hadn't been used since then, so I was saved. I hadn't dropped it, and I hadn't even taken it out of my wallet. So why did I lose it? There's only one answer I can think of without even thinking about it. My husband had taken it from my wallet. There's no other explanation. I thought it was something he would do. For about the past 6 months, he's been receiving dunning letters from various credit card companies. Probably, his card was maxed out and he couldn't use it anymore. When my husband settled his debts, he had made a new card before I knew it. And more than one. I left it alone because I didn't feel like saying anything since my husband was going to be the one paying anyway. But to steal someone else's card, that's just plain theft. Anyway, I'm glad I noticed it early. I immediately started packing my husband's things. I know where my husband is. I had a detective agency find out who and where his mistress was. She's a 26-year-old woman living in the neighborhood of my husband's parents' house. A whole generation younger than my husband. According to the investigation report, she was divorced last year and had returned to her parents' home. She seems to have been working at the business hotel where my husband stayed when he went to the reunion, so that's probably where they met. They were already neighbors, so they knew each other by face, so the conversation probably bloomed. My husband is always at her parents' house. They've known each other since they were children, so it may be easy for him to visit. But I wonder if her parents know that he is still married and are letting him stay. Well, either way, it doesn't matter. I had my husband's luggage loaded onto the truck that soon arrived and sent it off. Now it's our turn. I've cancelled the credit card, let's move too.
Yeah, sounds good.
My son seems overly excited. When I told him we would be living separately from his dad, he said, I fully agree. Just as my husband had long ceased to be a husband in my eyes. He had also long ceased to be a father in my son's eyes. I regretted not making this decision sooner. And by nightfall, we had moved into our new home. Of course, we completely cleared out the house we had been renting, turned off the water, gas, and electricity, and under the supervision of the real estate agent, returned the keys. As my son and I were discussing what to have for dinner, my husband called.
Hey, what's the meaning of this? Why are you sending my stuff? Everyone's in shock.
Well, you seem to be spending a lot of time there. So I thought it would be convenient for you to have your belongings.
Stop messing around. Thanks to you, Kelly's parents found out I'm still married. You included the divorce papers in the package. By the way, how did you know where I was?
I hired a detective agency to find out. The husband truly believed he hadn't been caught having an affair. How naive of him to underestimate me. Your behavior was blatantly obvious. I confirmed the affair, but I didn't want to bother investigating the identity of the woman because I have my own job, and I wanted concrete evidence.
Evidence?
If you want to get as much property division as possible, it's best to have evidence of the affair.
When I get home, you're gonna pay.
Go home. Where to?
To our house, obviously.
Oh, you still want to come home? That's a surprise. As my words implied, the husband seemed to have returned home the next day. He must have been shocked to see our completely empty house. I don't understand why he thought I'd still be there. After I'd sent him the completed divorce papers. And then today, he tried to use my credit card and was embarrassed when it didn't work. I reported the card as lost, so it's only natural that I filed a loss report. Oh, and I also reported a theft to the police while I was at it.
What?
The husband's voice went up an octave. It was obvious he was worried about being arrested. Well, I can't settle down unless he's worried to some extent. I did report it to the police, but unfortunately, because his family. I was told he can't be charged with theft. Furthermore, according to the credit card company, if a family member living with you uses the card, it's considered your responsibility, and you won't be exempted from the payment. I'm the one who has to pay. I'm glad I noticed before it was used. The husband's affair was proven, and the divorce went through smoothly. I reported the divorce to my company. Since my surname will change, it's customary to report the divorce as soon as possible. When I was asked why I was divorcing and casually said, because of my husband's infidelity, it quickly became known throughout the company. My ex-husband has been ostracized by his colleagues and is now seen with contempt. Besides, our company has strict ethical guidelines. So my ex-husband was transferred and is now working in a regional office. I used to pay most of the living expenses, so if he continues to spend money as before, he'll naturally run out. It seems he's finally realizing this. Plus, with the demotion and the resulting decrease in salary, plus child support and payment for the splurge on his own credit card, he seems to be living a very poor life. He's been late on payments, his card has been suspended, and he's failed all the new card screenings, so he can't get a new one. He even contacted me to lower the child support. But that's none of my business, and I certainly won't do it. Of course, I flatly refused. Then he had the audacity to suggest we get back together because he broke up with his mistress. That's absolutely impossible. Don't ever contact me again, I said, and hung up. The ex-husband's mistress, who knew he was married but didn't tell her parents, and whose previous divorce was caused by her infidelity, was disowned by her parents and kicked out of her parents' house. Whether she got my contact information from my ex-husband or not, she called me directly and asked me to reduce the child support. But it's absolutely impossible for her to say such a thing to me in the first place. Of course, when I refused, she started crying and screaming on the other end of the line. Sigh. Experiencing divorce really makes me realize how difficult it is. But now, I'm living a very enjoyable life every day with my son. My son also seems to be much more carefree and happy than when my ex-husband was at home. If I think he was never there from the start, there won't be any expectations. And that really feels liberating. I plan to keep doing my best in both parenting and work from now on.
You're really cheap, huh, Catherine? Cheap, you say?
Exactly. You even use such words like wasteful, which is what poor people would say.
Everything you wear are just cheap-looking clothes, and you have no taste.
Your face screams poverty in general.
But my company is a construction firm. I don't think I need to be that fashionable. The neighbors are watching, aren't they? It's embarrassing if they say the bride of the Joneses' house is ugly and unfashionable. I am Catherine Jones, and I'm 32 years old. 2 years after getting married, I hear such words from my in-laws almost every day. After marriage, I live with my in-laws, who are all spenders. My husband, on the other hand, is a type who saves money diligently. So I was somewhat surprised at his parents' way of spending their money. I continue to work after marriage. I work at a construction company started by my grandfather, and I was raised with my grandfather's teaching of modesty and frugality since I was a child. My mother passed away when I was in the 4th grade of elementary school, but both my grandfather and my father took care of me as much as they could. I was sad and heartbroken that my mother was gone, but the kindness of my grandfather and father comforted me a lot, so I tried my best with house chores for them. When I tried various things and saved money, my grandfather praised me a lot. The company is small and there aren't many employees, but everyone gets along like a family, and they always cared about me. My grandfather also passed away before I graduated from high school, and I started working at my father's construction firm right after graduating from high school to help him as much as possible.
I can't believe Catherine is old enough to join the company. Having her as our boss is reassuring, isn't it?
Everyone welcomed me with such words. I met my husband, Brian, who worked for a construction company. He began to request work from our company a few years after I started working at our company. He said things like how he likes to save money. So he got along well with me, who was used to saving money. About 10 years after I started working, my father got sick and passed away. My father, who was my only relative, went to heaven, and I was so devastated. But Brian comforted me in various ways, and I gradually started to rely on him, and we got married after dating for 2 years. After marriage, it was decided that we live with Brian's parents at his parents' house. But for me, who had no relatives, I was rather happy to live a lively life with his family, and I gladly agreed. But I don't really have the thoughts of buying new things as soon as I want them, like my in-laws do. I was somewhat surprised by the brand new electrical appliances in my in-laws' house, right after moving in with them. But the house we live in is quite old. I thought that if the in-laws didn't spend too much on other things that are really unnecessary, they could have been able to buy a house a long time ago. But I didn't say such a thing because I thought it would cause conflict. And shortly after we got married, the fact that I said, "Isn't it a waste?" to their act of throwing away and replacing things without hesitation because new products were released seems to have offended my in-laws. Since then, I have been told that I am stingy and poor. Recently, even words such as ugly and unfashionable have been added to the list. My father-in-law works for a major company and seems to earn quite a bit of money. So he said that he had a life that had nothing to do with saving money like me. I thought you were a celebrity because you said you were a CEO's daughter, but you're just the daughter of a humble subcontractor. You're so poor.
Yeah, both my son and I work for major companies, but he married such a poor person who only graduated from high school.
I'm told such terrible things like that by my in-laws. Even when Brian hears such words, my husband doesn't say anything to his parents. On the contrary, he told me,
"It's because you say unnecessary things. It's arrogant for a wife to have an opinion about her husband's parents."
My husband is not interested in what his parents do. He always says,
"We have decided not to interfere with each other."
I didn't intend to express my opinion, but I thought I might have said something unnecessary when I saw them frowning. But I never thought I would end up being told such things over and over again. I got married when I was 30, so I was hoping to have kids as soon as possible. However, my husband didn't seem to feel the same way and wasn't very cooperative. You can't really force these things, and I think it's best to let things happen naturally. So, I haven't said anything to him. Besides, our company is getting quite busy as our employees are working hard. Everyone is working hard to support me, so I want to meet up to their expectations. In the midst of all this, my in-laws asked for a loan. "Catherine, could you lend us some money?" "Excuse me?" "We overspent a little this month and we're short on funds. We'll pay you back once our payday comes." This sort of thing started happening more and more often, and I couldn't just rudely refuse. So I helped them out a little, but gradually the amount increased, and the repayment started to have some delays. It's only natural to help each other out as a family. When I asked for them to start paying back little by little, that's what my mother-in-law said to me. Out of desperation, I consulted my husband.
I see. I'm sorry for the trouble. I'll work more overtime and let's work hard together,
he said.
After we get through this, I also want to start thinking about the future, seriously.
The future?
I want to have kids and buy a house for us to live in separately from my parents.
What? I was a little surprised that my husband was thinking about such things, but I was really happy, so I decided to try a little harder. However, things didn't go that easily. After a while, my husband said that his parents were on the verge of bankruptcy. Bankruptcy?
Yeah, they're really in trouble. I used up all my savings to pay off their debts, but it's still not enough.
That much?
They're crying, saying if they go bankrupt, they will lose their position if it gets leaked to the company. So I need your help.
You need my help?
Can you pay off the rest of their debt for now?
What?
Please, you have some savings, right? I mean, your father left you a little money, didn't he?
Yes, but that's supposed to be for our future. I don't want to use what my father left me for my in-laws' debts, especially since they have been bullying me for being poor. I also resist the idea of spending all the money I've been saving since before we got married. But wouldn't your parents feel uncomfortable if I gave them the money?
I'll persuade them. If it's in the form of a loan, I think they'll be okay with it.
Even if it's called a loan, in reality...
Right. Let's have them sign an IOU. It's just a loan.
But are there any possibilities that they'd actually pay it all back?
My father will be retiring in 2 years. He'll get a retirement bonus, so we can get him to pay it back with that.
Will your parents agree to that?
I'll take responsibility for getting them to agree and make a promise to repay with the retirement bonus. Once this matter is settled, we're leaving this house. I can't stand being with my parents anymore.
All right, if you insist. With the hope of living with my husband in our own home, I used all my savings to pay off my in-laws' debt. Thank you, Catherine. It was somewhat pleasing to hear such words from my mother-in-law's mouth, who had never said thank you to me before. I didn't give it away. I got a signed IOU, so they'll pay me back eventually. My husband said the same, and I thought that if we could live alone without any trouble from my in-laws, it was a good result. But the next month, my husband suddenly changed his tune and started saying things I never expected.
Thanks to you, Catherine. It would have been embarrassing for me if my folks had gone bankrupt.
Indeed. It's all thanks to you, Catherine. I'm glad I could help. I was happy to see everyone else happy, but the next words my husband threw at me left me in disbelief.
You know, I used my savings to build a house. Well, I took out a loan too.
What?
Thanks to you, we can move without any worries.
Wait a minute. Didn't you use your savings to pay off your parents' debts?
No way. There's no way I could use my hard-earned savings for something like that.
I wanted to argue, saying so it was okay to use my money that I've been saving little by little. And part of that money was left by my father too. My husband said he'd put all his savings in, so I did too. But you said...
Of course I did. If I said to keep my savings and use yours, you wouldn't have used your money, right?
You deceived me?
Come on, it doesn't matter now. Everything has settled down perfectly. So I'll be living in the new house with my lover, whom I'll remarry to, and I'll leave you here for you to take care of my parents.
I couldn't understand my husband's words, and my mind went blank. What did my husband just say? That thought was spinning in my head. His lover? What? My husband is still my husband, and we haven't divorced yet. I don't understand what he meant by remarrying to his lover. What do you mean by that? I don't really understand what you're saying.
What? Why not? I'm speaking so clearly. Are you dumb?
What do you mean by remarriage? we're not even divorced yet. Plus, I used my savings to help your parents.
I know. That's why I'm grateful. That's why my parents agreed to live with you from now on. This means I can enjoy my new marriage life.
So, you've been cheating on me all this time?
That's not a nice way to put it. I plan to get married properly, so it's a serious relationship.
What are you talking about? You're married to me.
Well, that's all in the past now.
You mean we're getting a divorce?
Otherwise, I can't get remarried, can I? But don't worry.
About what?
You can continue living here, get along with my folks for a long time, so you'll be the one paying the rent for this place.
Seeing him say this so happily, he didn't seem like the husband I knew, but rather a different person. And my in-laws didn't object to what he had to say. So, I'm counting on you, Catherine. Huh? After all, his girlfriend is apparently still 20 years old. It'd be frustrating living with someone so young. That's why you can stay here. Stay here?
Our bodies are starting to wear out. It's comforting to have someone at home who can look after us.
Yes, yes. And we want you to do the housework too. My in-laws, who not only agreed with my husband but also bluntly asked me, his wife, in which we might be getting divorced, to take care of them, left me completely speechless. They probably already knew about Brian's affair.
So, I'm going to pack up and get ready to move out. I'll pick up the divorce papers later. All you have to do is sign them.
Brian said that and left the room. I was in shock for a while. My husband is remarrying his lover, and I'm supposed to live here with his parents. The reality that my husband revealed was overwhelming, and it felt as if it was pressing down on my heart. Having always believed in my husband and his words, I was truly in shock. I felt empty, wondering what all my hard work up until now had been for. I hated myself for being so stupid as to offer up my savings for this. I was disgusted with myself for blindly trusting and not noticing my husband's scheme. After a while, my husband returned, presenting the divorce papers with his signature right in front of me, who was still in a daze. And to top it off, his parents also looked happy as Brian held the divorce papers proudly. For a while, I blankly stared at the paper, but gradually anger began to rise within me. Why do I have to be subjected to such treatment? And why am I being treated so unfairly? As I was looking at the divorce papers, my heart gradually cooled down.
You've been a good help to me. That's what being a wife is all about, but your role ends today. Actually, my father has already quit his job and spent all his retirement money.
Huh? But he was going out every day, wasn't he?
He was going to casino, it seems. What a mess, huh? So from now on, you'll be taking care of my folks.
He said so, smirking at me. Does he truly think that I would silently comply with whatever he says? If he genuinely thinks so, he must be out of his mind. I thought to myself, if I continue to deal with such a crazy guy like him, I might go crazy. I was watching my husband's face, who was delightfully looking down on me while trying to organize my thoughts. Then I realized something. I decided to firmly teach him and his family that things won't go the way they want. Understood. Well then, everyone, please prepare for the welfare, okay? Saying so, I signed the divorce papers and stood up.
Huh?
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 I guess it seemed that they didn't understand the meaning of my words. The eyes of my husband and my in-laws were wide, being in shock. But my husband quickly regained his smile and opened his mouth.
What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind, or are you just bluffing?
The one who's lost their mind is you. What kind of thinking is that? Why would you think that I would take care of your parents after we're divorced?
But you have no savings left, and no place to go, right? You were happy when you married me and got a new family, weren't you? I thought it would be too cruel to take everything away from you, so I was thinking of gifting you my parents.
I'll return that gift, thank you. And I'll be claiming back the money I've put in as well.
Huh? There's no way that exists. You know full well that all of it was used for their debt. My parents have spent all the money and not a single dollar is left.
I'm curious to see how Brian's brain works when he can boast about the fact that his own parents have spent money so recklessly. Oh dear. How unfortunate. That means you'll have to rely even more on welfare.
No way. All the debts have been paid off with your money.
But there is an IOU, isn't there?
That's just a formality. Besides, there's no set repayment date, which means it's up to me when to repay it. In other words, I don't have to pay it back.
Are you an idiot? Whether it's just a formality or not, it's still an IOU. If there's no set repayment date, that means the lender can ask for the person who borrowed the money to repay it at any time.
Huh?
Brian's face changed drastically. He seemed to think that an IOU without a repayment deadline meant he didn't have to repay any of it back. It's shocking considering he works for a major company.
Fine. Then I'll make my parents file for bankruptcy. That would exempt them from the obligation to pay.
Huh? Brian seems determined to resist until the end, but he seems to have forgotten something crucial. Well, if they file for bankruptcy, your parents won't have to pay, but you will still have to. The fact is, Brian was the one who signed the IOU as his parents' guarantor, and it was all his idea. He may have thought he wouldn't actually have to pay and it was just a performance to convince me, but such excuses won't work. Looking at it now, I am thankful for his stupidity. When I informed him of this, he made a face as if he had just realized it. It's really thanks to you. Now I don't have to suffer in silence. At my words, now it was his turn to be in shock. To add insult to his wound, his parents were yelling at him, saying they didn't want to file for bankruptcy. He, in return, was shouting back at them. They are all only thinking about themselves. Seeing them like this, there's no way I want to be a part of this family. So, I left the house, leaving them behind. I have no regrets about leaving them at all. On my way home, I stopped by and submitted the divorce papers that I had just signed. My parents' house had been vacant since my father passed away, but it was left as it was. Brian often said that we should sell the house, but I never felt like doing that. And I'm glad I didn't. I hired a lawyer and requested my ex-husband and his family to settle the debt. Then, I got a frantic call from my ex-husband.
What the hell is this? I don't know anything about this debt.
But you signed it yourself, didn't you?
I'm not the one who borrowed it.
If the borrower can't repay, the guarantor does. That's what a guarantor is for, isn't it?
I don't have that kind of money. I just bought a house.
Then, do you want to file for bankruptcy? It might get you out of paying, but you'll lose everything you've got, including the house you just bought, the car you like so much, and your precious savings. You can't file for bankruptcy if you have those assets. Plus, you won't be able to get a credit card for a while. When I said that, he came up with another unbelievable idea. Upon hearing that, I was reaffirmed that this man is indeed crazy.
I get how you feel. If you say so, there's no choice for this. I'll get back together with you.
Excuse me?
You're picking a fight with me because you want to get back together, right? I'm not heartless. If you feel that way, then I'll marry you again. Then all of our debts will be cleared, right?
This time, I was really at a loss for words. I wondered if this is what they call true positivity, a concept I didn't quite understand myself. No way, that's not it. Why did I ever envision a future with a guy like him? After my father passed away, I was fully occupied mentally with taking over the construction company that I wonder if my thinking ability was also shut down because of that. But I decided to share one more piece of information since he made the effort to contact me. Oh, by the way, I think you'll get a call from my lawyer. In addition to the money you owe me, I'm also demanding property division.
What?
You have a girlfriend you plan to marry, right? Since she was there before our divorce, it's confirmed you were cheating. Of course, I'm demanding compensation from her too.
Are you still trying to milk me for money? You're so greedy.
Say whatever you want. I won't be defeated by your words. Goodbye. Since my ex-husband didn't respond, I hung up and called my lawyer and asked him to make sure all future communication with my ex-husband and his family went through him. I still have to receive property division, but all the debts have been paid off. My ex-husband ended up selling the house he bought to pay off the debts, but the balance of the loan remained. His lover, who he was supposed to marry, lost her house, was furious at being sued for compensation by me, and ended up spending all the money up to the limit of my ex-husband's credit card and left him. My ex-husband got into more debt, tried to cling on to my lawyer about it, but was turned down. But after that, he started stalking his ex-lover and got arrested, was what my lawyer told me. Naturally, he lost his job, and probably because he lost his mind, he came to my lawyer's office with his whole family to file for bankruptcy. My lawyer said he handled the procedures properly with a smile. But with the cost of the procedure, my ex-husband's family became penniless, and now the three of them are living in a small, dark apartment, working from morning till night and living a poor, sad life. It seems that they have applied for welfare, but it seems that they were denied because it's unacceptable for 3 healthy adults to receive money without working. Since compensation is not exempted even if you declare for bankruptcy, they have no choice but to just work hard. Now I live in a house that has been renovated, and I am working hard again. Everyone at the company is caring for me after my divorce, helping me in various ways, and I plan to value my employees and continue to work hard while saving money.
You are the one who will pay for the pain and suffer. Because you couldn't stay beautiful.
Dad, what are you talking about? My name is Melissa. I am feeling a huge sense of accomplishment right now. That's because today, I have finally paid off my home loan. I took out the loan immediately after getting married to my husband, John. We split the 35-year home loan exactly in half. We were able to save a little money as we used the land my grandfather owned for the property. However, repaying the loan was still tough. Since my daughter, Emily, who is now a high school student, was born, I hardly had time to rest due to housework, raising a child, and work. John is not good at housework, so I did most of it. But I was able to do that because I work from home. Because I spend a lot of time at home, I managed to take care of the housework.
I'm sorry for making you do most of the housework because you work from home. I'll contribute by paying more. Leave it to me.
At first, John used to say things like that. But that only lasted a few years. About 3 years after we started repaying the loan and after Emily was born, his attitude changed.
It must be easy for you to be at home all day. Even if you woken up by Emily's night cry, you're just napping during the day, right? Since you're home, you should be able to do the housework easily.
John was looking down on my work from home in his mind. He seemed to think of it as easy money making at home. Even work-from-home jobs have deadlines. Moreover, earning enough to repay the loan while doing housework and raising a child is not easy at all. But John didn't understand that. Honestly, there were many times when I wanted to leave John. In fact, I once brought up the idea of divorce to him. But at that time, John cried, apologized, and refused. Emily was also there. I didn't want the divorce to adversely affect Emily's future job opportunities or marriage. So I endured not getting divorced, and I have been trying my best ever since.
Then, would you mind signing these divorce papers for me?
For some reason, the moment I paid off my half of the home loan, John asked for a divorce. On that day, all three of us were celebrating finishing the loan payments at a fancy restaurant. I dressed up than usual to enjoy a delicious meal. And there, in such a place, John pulled out divorce papers. There had been no signs of this until then.
Mom, congratulations on paying off the mortgage.
Thank you. Now we need to start saving for retirement.
We can't splurge.
Of course not. We need to save for things like you're wanting to go study abroad in the future.
Thanks. I'll help with saving too. Just let me know if there's anything I can do.
Emily and I were having such a conversation. Even though we had been saving money until now, without the loan, we can pace up our savings. So, we were talking positively about how to use our money in the future. Emily had grown into a high school student, and it was deeply moving to be able to have such conversations.
I can't see you as a woman anymore. It's just, you desperately working puts me off. I can't deal with you anymore. I'm going to marry a younger woman now, so I need you to move out.
John suddenly blurted this out. Emily and I were dumbfounded, but John just kept talking.
Her name is Ava. Want to see a picture? Isn't she cute? She's nothing like you, Melissa. Even when I see her work, she's having fun and there's room to spare. She's having a fulfilling life. It's completely different from you.
Wait a minute. I was working hard to pay the home loans. Do you know how hard it is to pay off half the loan with a home-based job? And the reason I was busy was because of housework, right? Because you don't do anything.
But, isn't housework a woman's job? I'm not good at housework anyway.
I wasn't good at housework either. But I worked hard for the family. We just completed our loan payments. This is supposed to be our new start, right? Why would you say something like that now? When we bought the house, I brought up divorce, but you refused. You said, we have Emily, so don't divorce me.
I think differently than I did then.
John responded with an irritated look. Despite being in a beautiful restaurant, the atmosphere around us was simply the worst.
Can't do anything about it, right? Young women are more attractive. You having money is enticing, but youth always wins.
That's a terrible thing to say.
Dad, that's awful. You're being disrespectful to Mom. Apologize.
Emily, you might not understand yet. But, Melissa should understand, right? Women are just like appliances. The new ones perform better, and everyone wants the new ones, right?
Comparing me to an appliance. That's just too disrespectful.
Well, I no longer have any feelings for you, so don't you think it's only natural that something disrespectful comes out of me? And about not getting a divorce for Emily's sake. Yeah, I might have said something like that at that time. But that was just an excuse.
John spouted such unbelievable things. But before I could say anything, he kept on talking about his beliefs.
Back then, I thought bringing up Emily's name would stop you from divorcing me. But, the truth is, I wasn't thinking about Emily at all. I just refused to divorce so that I could keep someone who does household chores for me.
How could you say such things in front of Emily? You're her parent, that's not how you should be.
Doesn't matter if I'm a parent or not. I always put myself first. Sacrificing yourself for a child is self-fulfillment. Don't drag me into that.
John's words were unbelievable. Sure, he's always been selfish, but I thought he still fulfilled his responsibilities as a parent. I never thought he would say such a thing in front of Emily.
Well, listen. I do feel bad for ditching a woman your age. So, I'll give you all of our assets.
Dad, what are you saying? You just told her to leave.
That's why I'm saying I'll give her the money. But in return, I'm taking the house. Consider it division of property.
The division of property. Why should Mom pay that? Shouldn't you be the one paying the division of property, since you've been fooling around with a younger woman?
That's not how it is, Emily. Your mom has her faults too. Let's see. The reason for the division of property could be the crime of not being able to stay attractive. Oh, and let's add the crime of prioritizing her daughter over her husband.
John said so, drinking his alcohol and laughing uproariously. Emily was angry at John's attitude. But for some reason, I felt calm. Calm, or maybe I just couldn't understand what was happening, and my mind just stopped functioning. It just didn't make any sense. John seemed like an alien to me. He just said, "I'll give you all the money." But since we prioritized repaying the loan, there wasn't much cash left. Yet, he would give me that, and he gets the house? And the reason for the division of property is because I couldn't stay attractive and prioritized Emily? That seriously does not make any sense. I was desperately trying to figure out what to say to this alien like John. It is probably practical to involve lawyers and each other's parents. I was about to voice this thought when something unexpected happened. Before I could say anything, Emily had already opened her mouth.
By the way, Dad, is that young woman you've been seeing from about 5 stops away from us? It's Ava, isn't it? A bit older than me. You met her about 3 months ago, right?
What?
What do you mean? Why would you know something like that?
Ignoring the surprised parents, Emily continued while looking at her smartphone.
Well, I heard a friend's dad was recently caught up in the same kind of trouble. A woman approached him out of the blue and said, "Look at me, not your wife." But that dad consulted his wife right away. So they figured out the woman's intentions and were able to ward her off. Unlike my dad, he was wise, wasn't he?
Emily, what do you mean? How dare you talk to me like that?
What's the big deal? I'm just stating the facts. And apparently, that friend's family had its own troubles. Their marriage got a bit tense. But what's important is what comes next. This Ava person seems like she targets all men who have girlfriends or wives.
What do you mean? Emily, what are you talking about?
What are you going to say about Ava? I won't forgive whoever speaks ill of her, not even you.
Despite John's scary face, Emily looked composed. She then showed us some photos on her smartphone.
Look at this. The first one shows her approaching my senior from the club. The second one shows her approaching a male classmate of mine. Both of them have girlfriends, and she told them, "Look at me, not your girlfriend."
What does that mean?
That means she's a woman who likes to steal other people's men. She doesn't love you, Dad. She loves the thrill of stealing.
At Emily's words, John seemed shocked. He stood there silently for about a minute. But gradually, he seemed to regain his senses. He argued back at Emily with a desperate look on his face.
She is not like that. Don't spread such lies. I love her and Ava loves me too. You're still a high school student, what do you know?
Even as a high school student, I know a few things. The one who doesn't know anything is you, Dad. Right. What was the reason for the division of property again? A crime of prioritizing a daughter and not staying attractive. What's that? Were you a comedian? It's not funny at all.
What? How dare you talk to your father like that?
Dad, you're very disrespectful to Mom. Asking for alimony for such a weird reason. Isn't the property under Mom's name? Even the loan, Mom has been paying more in the name of supporting living expenses. The contribution to housework is also incomparable. If you really want to get separated, you should pay Mom the same amount she paid, right? Of course, the full amount of land price too. And you are the one who should leave the house after paying the division of property, since you've been fooling around with this Ava, Dad.
At Emily's words, John seemed at a loss for words. Perhaps John might be aware somewhere in his mind that he's at a disadvantage. But he seemed unwilling to ever admit that. He fiercely argues against Emily.
You're just saying whatever because you don't want your parents to get divorced. You're saying my beloved Ava is into stealing others' partners. That lie won't work on me. Ava has told me that I'm her destiny.
Yay, whatever.
Emily seems uninterested in John's rebuttal. She's looking at the menu excitedly, wondering what's coming next. On the other hand, John is furiously complaining to Emily, his face turning red.
Ava and I are destined to be together, and you are the devils trying to break us up. I could make you pay for those damages too.
Really? I didn't know that. Wow, you know so much because you're not a high school student, huh? Well, since you already know so much, why don't we get a lawyer involved?
What?
I mean, you believe you're right, don't you? But I don't think Mom could accept these kinds of claims, right?
Well, yeah. I don't think anyone can win over such an absurd argument.
Right. Besides, you can't really stay married to a man that makes such weird claims, right?
I guess so. I'm really done with it all. I was shocked at first, but watching you talk with Emily made me calm down.
Great. Then let's fill out the divorce papers now. We can sign it when we get home, okay? And submit it tomorrow. Then, let's hire a lawyer later to discuss the property division. All right, decision made. Now it's time for dessert. I'm looking forward to it.
I was taken aback by John's baffling statements, but his words gave me courage. No matter what kind of woman this Ava is, I can't love John anymore. And he can't live with us after this incident. So there's only one thing to do. Okay, I'm signing it. I signed the divorce papers that John brought. Then, the three of us silently ate our dessert and left the restaurant. The next day, the three of us went to City Hall to submit the divorce papers. This meant we were divorced, and John and I began to live separately in serviced apartments. Of course, I am living with Emily. After a while, we each hired lawyers and started discussing asset division. That being said, there's no lawyer who would admit to John's claim of, I couldn't stay beautiful and prioritized our daughter. John's fault was acknowledged. It seems that John, who wouldn't listen to anything Emily or I said, is weak against lawyers. Eventually, he honestly admitted his faults. In the end, John gave up his share of the assets, and our divorce was finalized. Also, I gained ownership of the house, including John's share. Apparently, this was due to John's long-standing neglect of his household duties. In any case, it was the best possible outcome for Emily and me.
Oh, I don't need money. I have Ava. You guys can cling to that 35-year-old house. I'm starting a new life.
John kept up his bravado until the end. However, unfortunately, John wasn't able to start his new life after all. It seems that young woman was just as Emily described. It was Ava's hobby to attract men who already have girlfriends or wives. So, as soon as John and I got divorced, Ava said, "I'm not interested in you anymore," and broke up with him. Of course, this was completely unexpected for John. Having lost his assets and his true love, a distraught John quickly asked me to get back together.
Melissa, I'm sorry. Forgive me. After all, you are the only one for me. And I'm the only one for you too, right?
What are you talking about? I'm fed up with doing housework for you. I don't even have the confidence to stay beautiful in the future. And of course, I plan to prioritize myself and Emily over you. So, there's no way I can reconcile with you and risk being demanded compensation again. Absolutely no way. Saying that, I hung up on him. Having been rejected so firmly, John must have been shocked. Since then, I haven't received any contact from him. Now, Emily and I have moved out of the serviced apartment and are happily living in our house, which is truly ours after finishing the mortgage. Emily will probably soon start focusing on entrance exams for universities. And of course, I plan to fully support her.
My name is Megan, and I'm 56 years old. I'm a housewife, and sometimes I help my daughter's clothing company out. My husband, Ryan, is 58 and also runs a company. Our daughter is named Anna, and she's 25. She's been a daddy's girl since she was a baby, and under my husband's influence, she's been running her clothing company with a friend since her university years. My husband and my daughter are so close that they can talk about work for hours on end, to the point where I can't join in to their conversation. Our daughter married a man named Stephen, who is 3 years older than her, 2 years ago. When they decided to get married after dating for a year, I told them to think it over. But Stephen was so eager to marry her that she eventually accepted his proposal. The reason why our daughter agreed to marry him seems to be because she was moved by Stephen's willingness to be married into our family.
I know Anna values her parents. I want to reassure you that our marriage isn't too soon by becoming your son-in-law who married into this family. And we can live together so you can see your grandchildren anytime.
He would say so, which deeply touched and made our daughter happy. Seeing how happy she was to get married, we decided to give them our blessing. But soon enough, we found out that this was a mistake. We discussed with our daughter and her husband and decided to renovate the second floor of our house into a residence for 2 households. Although some may say that we were spoiling my daughter and her husband, we paid for the renovation fee. Since our daughter was our only child, we thought she would get married and move out, but we probably got carried away by the idea of living together. 2 years after our daughter's marriage, I noticed that she seemed less lively and was losing weight. "Anna, you don't seem well, and it looks like you've lost some weight," I said, peering into her face. "Really? It's nothing. Maybe it's because I'm on a diet," she said, which reminded me of how she complained about gaining weight right after the wedding, and I was convinced with what she had said. "You're not fat. Eat well and cheer up," I told her. "Thank you. I'm sorry for worrying you," she said with her usual smile. As I watched her head off to work, waving goodbye, she turned around and waved back several times, which made me feel relieved. But an hour later, I received a call from the hospital that Anna had been injured and was brought into the hospital. I called my husband to tell him that Anna had been injured and was at the hospital. Since his office is close to the hospital, he said he'd be there right away, and I rushed over as well. When I arrived at the hospital, Anna was already in surgery. When I asked my husband what happened to her, he said,
Apparently, she fell from the top of the stairs at the station. The diagnosis is that she has a compression fracture of the lumbar vertebrae and a spinal cord injury. She might end up bedridden.
And broke down in tears. I also cried as I regretted sending her off to work this morning. This morning, Anna looked thin and seemed to lack energy. Maybe she was really struggling. If I had stopped her from going to work, this wouldn't have happened, I said.
There's no point in regretting now. Let's pray that the surgery goes well,
he replied. Okay, I said, and began praying. Then my husband said,
I'll call Stephen,
and headed outside the hospital. After he finished the call and came back, he looked furious. What's wrong? I asked. Apparently, Stephen said in a happy tone,
Oh, really? Well, I'm going on a vacation abroad then. Take care.
To Stephen's response, my husband said,
Hey, Anna might be bedridden due to a severe spinal cord injury, you know.
But despite this, Stephen laughed off the severity of the situation and said,
Well, my being here won't change anything, will it?
Before hanging up the phone. Anna's business partner and her best friend, Amy, rushed to the scene. Amy, too, looked furious. It seems that Amy received a phone call from Stephen. Stephen apparently said,
Anna can't go to work because she's in surgery for a spinal cord injury. Oh, and she might not be able to go to work at all after that. She might become bedridden. And I'm going on a trip abroad, so let me know how Anna's doing.
When Amy got angry and said, Aren't you her husband? What do you mean? You're going on a trip abroad. Why have you been laughing all this time? Stephen reportedly replied,
It's my first time abroad in a while, so of course, I'm happy.
And then he said,
Do you think Anna will get better if I go to the hospital? Her mother is there, so she'll be fine.
And then apparently hung up the call. Amy was grateful to have learned about Anna being hospitalized and her situation, but she was angry about Stephen's nonchalant attitude toward Anna. Then Amy shared even more shocking news that sunk us further into despair. Ryan and Megan, please, calm down and listen. Actually, Stephen might be dating our part-time worker. He might be going on that trip abroad with her. That girl has taken a week off starting today. When I asked, Is Stephen cheating on Anna? It seems that Anna had been consulting with Amy about this for a while. The part-time worker seemed to have fallen in love with Stephen when he came to pick up Anna from work. She pursued him, succeeded, and bragged to the other part-time workers about it. One of the part-time workers informed Anna, and it seems that's when she started to worry about it. Perhaps that's why she fell down the stairs, because she was distressed about it. I felt that I couldn't forgive Stephen. As I cried and said, I will never forgive him, my husband, trying to calm me down, asked,
What are you planning to do? Are you going to fight him without any evidence?
Amy quietly said, There might be evidence. Anna had hired a private investigator. Amy, who had gone with Anna to the private investigator, handed me a business card from her card case. I put the card in my wallet, sat down on the sofa in front of the operating room again, and prayed for Anna's safety. And when the light for the surgery in progress lamp turned off, the sound of us three holding our breath echoed. A few minutes later, we were led to the consultation room by a nurse. The surgeon explained the details of the operation and what to expect in the future. He He said Hannah's operation went well because it was performed early and the injury was mild, so if she works hard at rehab, there's a high possibility she could return to her normal life. However, there's also a chance that she might still have some numbness in her hands and feet. However, the surgery was successful, so we thanked the surgeon and the nurses, took a look at Anna in the ICU, and decided to go home for the time being. Amy decided not to answer the phone when Stephen, who would probably call to check on Anna's situation, called. The next day, when we went to the hospital, Anna had woken up in the ICU. She couldn't speak, but she looked at us and started crying. I vowed to Anna in my heart, I will take my revenge on that man to the very end. Upon hearing the doctor's words that she would be allowed into the hospital room the next day, my husband said,
I'd like her to stay in a private room, please. I wouldn't mind if it's expensive.
It seemed that his worries and pity for Anna had exploded, and he was willing to spare no expense. With that, we mouthed, "See you tomorrow" to Anna and headed to the investigating agency. Amy was already there at the investigating agency. Apparently, she had just gotten the results and was about to contact Anna. The result was that Stephen's guilty.
Rather than guilty is absolutely guilty, and there's something even more shocking,
the investigator says, pulling out some documents to explain. The woman Stephen was seeing was a woman named Amelia. There were many pictures of Stephen and Amelia being together, arm in arm. There was also a photo of them entering a travel agency together. It seems that Amelia had told her co-worker at her part-time job that she was going on a trip abroad with Stephen. And her co-worker got suspicious about it, she said, showing us a picture on her phone. It seems she sent a photo of the flight tickets, she says, as she showed us a photo of the tickets with Stephen and Amelia's names on them.
This could also be evidence,
the investigator said, so we decided to keep it as evidence of Stephen's infidelity. The investigator referred us to a lawyer, and we decided to visit the lawyer for a consultation at a later date. On the way home, my husband seemed very angry, driving furiously to drop off Amy before heading back. Once he got home, he quickly grabbed the contract of this house, saying,
I don't need this house. I'll sell it. No, I'll demolish it. If this house didn't exist, I wouldn't have to live with that man. I don't need this house.
He couldn't stay calm when it came to our daughter. However, I didn't want to live under the same roof with such a man either. Although it was a waste, I agreed with my husband. My husband immediately called the company that had done the renovation.
I really like the house you worked so hard to build.
He apologized while explaining why he was requesting to demolish it.
I have a daughter, too, so I understand. Don't worry about it. Let's just demolish it right away. When your son-in-law comes back and finds the house gone, he'll be in shock, the construction company suggested, so we promptly took action. My husband was so focused to get revenge that he didn't even go to his company. Instead, he prepared for the move, found a new place, visited the lawyer, went to the hospital, and was full of motivation. Thanks to the many people who helped my husband, the move and the house demolition were successfully completed. All of Stephen's belongings were taken by his parents. When we gave them his things, we told his parents about the evidence of Stephen's infidelity, how he had happily gone on a trip with his mistress even though our daughter was in the ICU, and that we couldn't live together anymore. We had not yet discussed divorce between Anna and Stephen because our daughter was still unstable. Stephen's parents apologized profusely and begged us for Anna and Stephen to not get a divorce, but when my husband asked them, Could you say the same thing if it was Stephen's sister in my daughter's place?
they got quiet and couldn't say anything to argue back. Both the news of Anna's accident and Stephen's infidelity were new to Stephen's parents, and they seemed deeply shocked. After loading the luggage into the car, Stephen's parents bowed their heads and said,
"Please, we beg you, for them to not get a divorce. We will tell our son to change his heart."
Since we didn't respond much to them, in the end, they dropped their shoulders and left in what seemed like they gave up. Before returning to our new home, we went to our daughter's hospital room. Although she was frail, our daughter had started to be able to speak. Determined, I started the conversation while showing the materials from the private investigation agency. "Why did you stay silent knowing about Stephen's infidelity?" I asked, to which she replied, "I thought I needed to gather the evidence before confronting him with divorce in mind. Stephen is the kind of person who would immediately dodge and run. If you found out about him cheating, you would confront Stephen, wouldn't you? But then I thought I wouldn't be able to obtain any evidence." It seemed that she had made up her mind to divorce.
"If you asked me not to confront him, I would have endured. It hurts to think that you were worrying about this all by yourself." My husband says this with a look on his face that he's about to cry, holding Anna's hand. Then he told her about how he demolished the house and proceeded to move, met with Stephen's parents, explained the situation, and have them pick up his belongings. "Maybe my father-in-law is getting anxious because he thinks your company will stop doing business with them. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry, even though you had our home renovated for me. I can't forgive him for choosing his mistress over me in my situation. I want to divorce him." "All right, we'll tell the lawyer exactly that. Dad and Mom are both supportive of your decision to get a divorce. Our next house will be a high-rise condo. Your room is going to be spacious too." He said this while patting our daughter's head. She finally managed to smile through her tears. When the hospital staff found out we were visiting, a doctor came and explained her condition and the future outlook to us. The fact that the surgery was done quickly means she should be able to return to her normal life after rehab. The doctor warned us that there's a chance she might experience some numbness in her hand, but said it's unlikely. "Thank you so much, sir. That's a relief, isn't it, Anna? Since you have nothing to be worried anymore, there's no need for you to be lost in thought while you're walking anymore." "I didn't fall down the stairs because I was lost in thought. Someone pushed me." We were shocked by her revelation. We asked her, "Are you sure?" many times, and each time she insisted she was telling the truth with a serious look in her eyes. She said that the culprit she saw for a moment was a woman with blonde hair, but she couldn't remember her face. However, she did remember being pushed with both hands. Upon hearing that, the doctor said, "Since it's my obligation, I'll report this to the police and ask them to investigate about it." So we decided to let him handle it. Anna seemed tired from all the talking, so we shared what we had just found out with a lawyer. As soon as we finished the call with the lawyer, we received a call from Stephen. "I heard from my father. I'm rushing home now. It seems there's been some misunderstanding, so I'd like to discuss it. If we can clear up the misunderstanding, Anna and I won't need a divorce, right?"
He was laughing as he talked. "It's a good thing I answered the phone." I said this as I hung up the phone. Later in the evening, Stephen called again. This time, Ryan was the one who answered the phone.
"The house is gone. What about my belongings? To go this far over a misunderstanding is just too much and thus just stupid. Where should I go? Where are you living now?" "Haven't you heard from your parents? They took your belongings home. What's this misunderstanding? We even have evidence from the investigation agency, you know."
he retorted, as if he looked like he was mocking Stephen. Upon hearing the word evidence, Stephen became frantic.
We're just friends. There's no romantic relationship. If the misunderstanding is resolved, tell me where you live. My father told me not to come back until the misunderstanding is cleared, and so that Anna and I can avoid getting a divorce.
Stephen pleaded. Despite his pleas, Ryan's single word,
impossible,
made him start to lose his temper.
Really, you broke into my house and removed my belongings, didn't you? I'll sue you for trespassing. If you don't want that, tell me your address. Are you ready to lose me, who was married into your family and your only current heir?
Amidst Stephen's rant, a woman's voice could be heard from his phone. Enough already. Just break up. You couldn't even have a child with your wife. Hearing this, my husband rushed to ask,
What? A child?
But it seemed that the call was cut off. We tilted our heads in confusion as we hadn't heard from the doctor at the hospital that Anna was pregnant. Although we were concerned about that, we were more exasperated than angry to think Stephen was still with that woman. The next day, after visiting our daughter in the hospital, my husband went to work for the first time in a long time. Around noon, Amy, accompanied by a woman, came to our house. The woman who came with Amy was a part-timer hired around the same time as Amelia, Stephen's mistress, and her name was Emma. Emma seemed to be annoyed by being treated as a friend by Amelia. For example, when she went to buy lunch at a store, Amelia would follow Emma and put her items on the counter for Emma to pay. It was lunchtime, and the store was busy, so Emma couldn't refuse and ended up paying for her. When she complained, Amelia said, "It's okay, we're friends after all." Even at work, Amelia was said to be slacking off most of the time during work. And she would go home on time even though there were some overtime to do. When Emma confronted her, Amelia responded with, "We're friends, so you should support my love life," causing trouble for Emma just because they were friends. At that point, Amy said, "Emma came to consult me about this. I also heard some information that would be good to let you know." When Amy asked Emma to show us, she showed us messages on her smartphone. We were shocked by the content. The content included screenshots of conversations between Stephen and Amelia, photos of the two of them being flirty, and more. That wasn't all. There was a confession from Amelia that she had bumped Anna down the stairs. The reason why she did such a thing to Anna was also there. The reason was that Stephen had told Amelia that Anna's period was late, so Amelia thought Anna was pregnant. Amelia thinking that if Anna got pregnant, Stephen would go back to Anna, so Amelia carried out her plan and was happy that everything went as she expected and Anna was hospitalized and couldn't go on the trip. Emma said, "I can't forgive her for trying to take away the CEO's husband and doing such a thing for her own convenience. It's terrifying, so I consulted with our vice CEO, Amy." We were surprised at Amelia's stupidity in sending evidence of the affair to Emma, but we were relieved to get her confession. And I posed a question. I haven't heard anything about Anna's miscarriage from the doctor. "She's not pregnant. She said that she's just been worried about Stephen, causing her period to be irregular." Upon hearing this, we as a couple let out a sigh of relief. So she really wasn't pregnant after all. My husband decided to consult a lawyer armed with screenshots of the confession and pictures of Amelia and Stephen being affectionate. The lawyer advised him to file a report with the police, so the next day my husband and I submitted printed out screenshots as evidence. Even as we consulted with the lawyer, we were receiving calls from Stephen every day. Every time, he'd say things that sounded like threats, such as, "I'll sue you for trespassing," and "You be in trouble if I don't become the heir, right?" But neither my husband nor I said anything and just hung up the phone. Then finally, the day of the revenge arrived. As per our lawyer's instructions, we summoned Stephen and Amelia to a conference room at my husband's company.
Come with your friend. We want to hear how we're misunderstanding things.
Upon hearing this, Stephen said,
Okay, but when you realize it's a misunderstanding, you have to apologize to me and my friend. Oh, and you'll be compensating my parents too.
Looking at him, I regretted more and more for allowing my daughter to marry such a man like him. As we waited in the conference room with our lawyer, Stephen and Amelia arrived half an hour late. When they saw our lawyer, they were surprised and said with an awkward laugh,
Why did you bring a lawyer here? Let's just talk as a family.
On the lawyer's instruction to
please sit down,
Stephen and Amelia took their seats, looking agitated. First of all, Stephen's story hadn't changed at all.
Amelia is just a friend. I have no romantic feelings for her.
Amelia was nodding along on the side. Then our lawyer asked,
So, Stephen, this Emily woman is your real girlfriend, right?
And handed them a picture of Stephen with his arm around a woman named Emily. At that, Amelia's face changed and she became angry.
Wait a minute! Are you saying that you have another woman? What's your relationship with this woman? Weren't you going to marry me once you took over the company?
Amelia shouted at Stephen. Stephen tried to calm her down, saying,
I don't know this woman. You're just a friend, right? Calm down.
But Amelia's rage didn't subside.
You told me that your wife was pregnant, so I had to get my hands dirty. And all of it was for our future.
Stephen could only repeat,
Calm down, please, calm down.
Our lawyer then said,
Emily has already admitted her relationship with Stephen. She has returned to her family home and has cut off contacts with Stephen.
Upon hearing this, Stephen asked,
She went home?
And realizing his mistake, covered his mouth and his face turned pale. Our lawyer then turned to Amelia and said,
We have enough evidence of your relationship with Stephen, as well as evidence of the crime you just confessed to having committed against Anna.
Amelia, becoming frantic, stood up and said,
I admit to the affair, but Stephen talked me into doing the stair thing because his wife was getting suspicious and we couldn't go on vacation, and because his wife was pregnant. I apologize. I'll pay compensation. I'll break up with Stephen. Just don't tell the police.
Amelia burst into tears. Stephen then shouted at Amelia,
I never told you to do anything like that. You've ruined everything. It's over between us. You deserve to be arrested.
Our lawyer then told Stephen,
We will be filing for divorce between you and Anna and requesting compensation to you. If you disagree, we'll see you in court.
Stephen was so persistent that he wouldn't divorce Anna, but when he heard the word court, he quieted down. And so, under the direction of our lawyer, he signed the divorce papers. He feared that if it became a police matter, it would affect his position at his own company, and he was afraid of it becoming public knowledge. He was made to sign a document agreeing to pay $56,000, and the meeting was adjourned. The amount was high, but considering that Anna, being the CEO, wouldn't be able to work for a while, it felt like a bargain. Afterwards, Amelia was eventually arrested, and the compensation was promptly paid in full by selling her parents' house and land. As they say, you can't keep people's mouths shut. Unwanted rumors of infidelity and assault related to Stephen spread in his workplace, reaching to his bosses, and it seemed his prospects for promotion were cut off. The company where Stephen's father worked lost its business with my husband's company, and it seems Stephen's father's company went bankrupt. Stephen's father disowned him, so Stephen, who had no one to help him, quit his job and raised the compensation money with his severance pay and money borrowed from a consumer finance company. Afterward, there were rumors where some people saw Stephen collecting aluminum cans while riding his bicycle. My daughter Anna was able to return to work a year later after enduring the rigorous rehabilitation.
I don't need a boyfriend for a while.
Anna, who said this, now values her body and works more than before. Emma, who had helped us, seems to have been invited by Anna and Amy to work as a regular employee. As for my husband, he's working hard with the slogan, "Active for Life," so he won't lose to our daughter's company. After all, the revenge drama was pretty pricey. I'm also going to do my best to help out at my daughter's company.
Mother-in-law, I bought a luxurious cake. Would you like to eat with us?
The daughter-in-law shows me a box of cake in her right hand with an unusually lively expression. Despite having ignored me for the past month, she suddenly wants to celebrate. It's perplexing.
Isn't it your birthday today, Mom? We thought we'd like to celebrate with you.
My son, who smiles and speaks these words, seems alien to me. There was a reason why I couldn't accept their words of wanting to celebrate with sincerity. I know both my son and his wife think of me as a nuisance. It's too good to be true, even if it's my birthday. I should have declined clearly, saying sorry, I'm not up for it today. But I got swept up in their enthusiasm and ended up saying thank you. Oh, I'm falling right into their trap. I must avoid this situation at all costs. I will punish them, who think I'm a fool. I discreetly pulled out my phone from my pocket so they wouldn't notice. My name is Susan. I am a 72-year-old housewife. My husband passed away 5 years ago. Luckily, he was the founder of a major restaurant chain and left me a considerable amount of inheritance, which is now supporting my life. However, I know that money can quickly run out if wasted, so I use it wisely. Thank you, dear. It's my daily routine to give thanks to my husband's altar every morning. There's no doubt that the reason I can still live normally after my beloved husband's death is thanks to the wealth he left behind. For a year after my husband passed away, it was too much for me both physically and emotionally, and I couldn't even eat properly. Even in front of my favorite cake, I couldn't muster the desire to eat. It was my son, John, who supported me through that time. I have a son and a daughter, Mayo, but my daughter hasn't been home since she had a big fight with me the year my husband passed away. She just had a baby and was desperate, and I had no capacity to spare, so we couldn't be considerate of each other. As a result, she went back to her husband and children's home and hasn't shown her face since then. I suppose my grandchild is now 5 years old, but I don't even know what she looks like now. On the other hand, my son and his wife, Mary, took care of me.
I know it's tough for you, Mom, so leave things around you to us.
Susan, please let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
They both lived in a condominium in the next town, but after my husband died, they suggested we want to live together. However, no matter how lonely I am after losing my husband, I can't interfere with their private life. And moving costs are not a small matter. The last thing I wanted was to burden my children. No, it's fine. You guys have helped me enough, so please continue living in your condominium. Even though I emphasized this, they forcibly moved into my house. I felt very sorry, but I was also so grateful to them. Thanks to their willingness to take on the housework, I managed to regain my spirits and recover my usual rhythm. Looking back now, my fate may have been off course from this point on. It's too late to regret now, though. 5 years have passed since John and Mary started living with me. I had heard that Mary was a lady from a wealthy family, but she was a bit absent-minded and spacey. She would spill the dishes she had set, or run the washing machine twice in a row. These are small things, but there were many times when I thought, is she okay? Each time, she would joke and apologize, saying, I did it again, sorry. Since she was usually kind to me, I didn't have any particular complaints. So I had been living amicably with John and Mary, but I started feeling uncomfortable since about a month ago. The first time I thought something's off was when the dinner I had prepared for the three of us during the day was completely gone by the time I got home. Normally, my son and his wife both work full-time. I'm over 70, but I find it easier on my mind to go out and work than to stay cooped up at home all the time, so I've been working part-time for a few hours each day. Since John and Mary don't have time in the morning as they leave for work, it's become a daily routine for me to prepare dinner at noon. That day, my job ran late, and when I came home, there was no food left in the fridge. When I asked John and Mary, they replied, we don't know. We only ate our portion. Susan, could it be that you're starting to become senile? We only had 2 servings today, so we thought you'd be eating out. She feigned innocence. No matter how old I am, I would never forget about the meal I made. I thought it might be some sort of prank and waited for the punchline, but neither John nor Mary mentioned anything of the sort. Instead, this incident was the beginning of subtle harassment from John and Mary.
Speaking of which, Mom, this house was bought 30 years ago, wasn't it? There's no mortgage anymore, right?
I would love to live in such a wonderful house.
They began to show their intentions to take over the house with their actions, sometimes changing the furniture, arrangement and taste without regard to my opinion. I was saddened to see my ideal home, which my husband and I had built together, gradually changing to their liking. Even when I told them that shelf was Father's favorite, Mary brushed it off with, but let's replace this old shelf with a new fashionable one. It will match better. Originally, Mary came from a wealthy family, and she must have lived in a much more wonderful house than this ordinary one. I began to suspect that they were really short of money, despite their seeming lack of desire for this house. Even though they were both working, they seemed to have no money. What on earth were they using it for? I found their behavior suspicious and attempted to observe them. But a month passed without me being able to figure out exactly what they were spending their money on. I was still being ignored by the 2 of them, and my opinions were no longer even reflected in the decisions about the house. Even so, I still felt grateful to John and Mary, who had taken care of me since my husband passed away. Especially Mary, who had been living with her mother-in-law. Something she must have hated, had willingly lived with me. I couldn't do anything to harm that kindness now. So, at that point, I thought I mustn't do anything to upset them, no matter what they did to me. But an event occurred that shook my determination. One night, I was thirsty in the middle of the night, so I left my room to get a drink of water in the living room. The kitchen is in the back of the living room, but when I opened the door, I saw John and Mary sitting on the sofa and stopped my hand that was opening the door.
Susan is quite thick-skinned. Despite all this harassment, she still doesn't notice. Is she clueless?
Hey, it's only been a month or so, right? If she gives up this easily, our plan will be ruined.
I know. It was tens of millions, wasn't it? Or maybe more. We can get that much money.
That's right. If you can just endure it, Father's inheritance will be ours.
We won't have to struggle anymore. And I want to end this cohabitation as soon as possible. Initially, I felt sorry for Susan, so I agreed to live together. But living with a mother-in-law is mentally exhausting.
I felt a dull impact in my head. Mary sighed deeply, crossing her legs. John gave a disgusting chuckle. Realizing that John and Mary were plotting something outrageous, I was frozen on the spot. They had been kind to me so far just to steal my husband's inheritance. I couldn't believe that there was such a plot behind their kind words of, "It must be tough." The feeling of betrayal was all the stronger because they had been kind to me. I didn't force them to live together. In fact, I initially refused because I didn't want to cause any trouble. It was them who insisted on living together, and I didn't think I was at fault. Was this their whole purpose? Remembering what they had done for me so far made my head feel like it was going crazy. If I continue to live in ignorance, not only will I be evicted from this house, but my husband's precious inheritance will also be taken away. I absolutely don't want that. I'm not going to let them have their way. Knowing that John and Mary were now my enemies, I decided to ask my friends and neighbors to monitor their activities. Then, I uncovered their secrets that I could not have discovered on my own. My son, it turned out, frequented a casino to and from work, squandering away money. As for my daughter-in-law, it seemed she wasn't even going to work at all. For some reason, she was pretending to go to work every day and seemed to be shopping for expensive accessories and clothing at department stores. I had never seen the items she bought at home, so she must have been hiding them somewhere I didn't know. According to an acquaintance who saw Mary buying all kinds of high-end brand products, she's like a possessed beast. She's definitely a shopping addict. In other words, it seemed that the act of purchasing itself was the goal, not a desire to wear brand items. This also meant no matter how much she bought, she would never be satisfied. No wonder they were running out of money. I shivered to learn they had such extravagant habits. Since discovering John and Mary's secrets, I had not been able to live peacefully. As I was mentally pushed to the edge, wondering how to escape their mistreatment, I received a call on my seldom-rung smartphone. The call was from an unknown mobile number. While wondering who it could be, I pressed the call button and put my smartphone to my ear. "Hello."
Hello, Mom?
Hearing the familiar voice from the other end of the phone, I inadvertently let out a surprised, "Huh, Mayo, is that you, Mayo?"
Yeah. Long time no see.
Surprisingly, the caller was my daughter, Mayo, with whom I had fallen out and lost contact 5 years ago. "What's gotten into you all of a sudden? You haven't contacted me at all until now."
Well, you're the same, aren't you? Please, no nagging. It's been a while since we've spoken.
Indeed, what my daughter said was true. Back then, both Mayo and I were overwhelmed, and a small fight escalated beyond control. But now 5 years had passed, and I was gradually getting over the sadness of losing my husband. According to Mayo, her child had turned 5 and she was finally calming down. She said she remembered me at that moment and decided to reach out. Feeling desperate due to John and Mary's actions, I couldn't help but be overwhelmed by hearing my daughter's voice after such a long time. I sniffled, trying not to let Mayo hear it, but it seems it was audible. She got worried and asked, "What's the matter?" For a moment, I hesitated whether to tell her about my son and his wife. If I told her, it might cause unnecessary worry for Mayo, who was busy with childcare. But when Mayo kindly insisted, "I'm fine, so if something happened, tell me," I confessed everything about John and Mary trying to kick me out of the house and aiming for my husband's inheritance.
That happened.
"I'm sorry for bringing this up. It has nothing to do with you."
No, it does have something to do with me. I'm sorry for leaving you alone all this time. From now on, I'll be on your side, Mom.
At my daughter's kind voice, I burst into tears this time. Mayo's voice, trying to soothe me over the phone, felt like a heavenly salvation. A few days have passed since then, and my 72nd birthday came around. I've been in touch with Mayo ever since. Seeing my grown-up grandchild's picture and being moved to tears was just yesterday. Today also, I received a message from Mayo saying happy birthday. Just as I was about to reply with a thank you message, I heard the sound of the front door opening. John and Mary had come home.
Susan, we bought a fancy cake. Would you like to join us?
Mary, with a more vibrant expression than usual, brought a box of cake she was holding in her right hand closer to me. For the past month, she had been ignoring me, and suddenly celebrating feels baffling.
It's your birthday today, isn't it, Mom? We wanted to celebrate it together.
Seeing John smiling and saying this makes him seem like a creature I don't understand. The two of them, who are always short of money, wouldn't splurge on a fancy cake just because it's my birthday. This must be a trap. They are plotting to execute a strategy to entrap me. Thank you. Despite not trusting them at all, words of gratitude automatically spill from my mouth. I can't go on like this, playing into the hands of my son and his wife. I must avoid this situation. I will punish them for thinking I'm a fool. I quietly pulled out my phone from my pocket without them noticing. I promptly sent a message to Mayo saying help me. Mayo quickly replied with understood, wait for me. I trust her, so I put my phone back in my pocket. Shall we have dinner before the cake? Wanting to buy as much time as possible, I proposed this to them.
That's a good point. We should eat properly.
Agree.
I assumed they also didn't want to act suspiciously. As usual, I heated the meal I had prepared and set it on the table. While eating dinner, I anxiously waited for Mayo to come. Mayo should be living in the next county, but would she really come so soon? However, as we were finishing dinner, the doorbell rang.
Mom, big brother, long time no see.
John and Mary seemed surprised to see Mayo, who popped up from the entrance.
Me, Mayo, why are you here?
I came to celebrate Mom's birthday.
It seems she was planning to come and celebrate my birthday anyway, and she was already nearby. However, John probably thinks that Mayo and I are still on bad terms, so he is confused by her sudden visit.
What?
By the way, I have something to talk to you and Mary, big brother.
John and Mary looked at each other. I could see them silently asking what should we do.
Not here, let's go upstairs. Mom, please wait.
Oh, okay. I wonder what my daughter is planning to talk to them about. I trust her, but since we haven't met for 5 years, I feel a bit uneasy about whether I can trust her completely. After a while, I received a message from my daughter who was upstairs.
They are lacing a part of the cake with something. The bits with strawberries and grapes are drugged. I'm pretending to cooperate with them. Once I lied that I still held a grudge against Mom, they were easily fooled.
I knew it. Mayo was on my side. She was clever, and she exposed the John plan. Thank you, Mayo. Drugs, how scary. I'll find a way to swap out the cakes. After about 15 minutes, Mayo, John, and Mary came downstairs.
Well, I didn't expect Mayo to come. It was a good idea to buy a whole cake.
Let's eat it soon, everyone.
Mary smiles, impatient to start eating.
Oh, I'll get everything ready. Everyone, please sit down.
No, I'll help too.
It would have been best to swap the drug cake at this point, but John wasn't so careless as to let Mayo take care of the preparations. But you will know soon. You're the ones who will be taken aback. Mayo and John brought the cut cake from the kitchen. My cake has strawberries and grapes, while everyone else's has just strawberries.
Let's eat.
Mary, overly excited and at maximum tension, bites into the cake.
Delicious. Susan, please eat too.
Mary urges me to eat the cake. At that moment, Mayo exclaimed, "Ah,
What's up?
I forgot to tell you both something earlier.
I can't let this ruin the plan." With a sense of urgency, she said, "Never mind, just follow me," and forcibly pulled the sons into the hallway.
What the? We were just at a good part.
From the other side of the hallway, I could hear John's annoyed voice. "This is a great opportunity Mayo has given me. I remove only the grapes from the cake on my plate and swap it with John's cake. Then I put the grapes back on the switched cake on my plate. It looks just like it did before. No one will know that I've swapped the plates." As I was swapping the plates, the three of them returned to the living room. Mayo must have told them something to tide over the situation. What's with everyone? Think about the person who's been kept waiting in front of such a delicious-looking cake.
Sorry. Please, Susan, enjoy.
Was she too excited about what was about to happen, or was Mary unable to contain her overflowing joy? I ate a piece of the cake in front of the three of them. Wow, this is really delicious. It's so good it makes my tongue melt. I smoothly ate the second and third bites of the cake. As the amount of cake decreased, I could see John and Mary's faces gradually turning pale at the sight of me acting as if nothing was wrong. "What's wrong? Aren't you eating?" With an expression of not knowing what was happening, John ate the cake on his plate. He took a rather big bite, and I couldn't help but worry if he was okay eating that much at once. And at that moment, there was a loud noise, and my son toppled over backwards with his chair. The loud noise startled me and Mayo, and we both jumped. Looking closely, I could see John foaming at the mouth with his eyes rolled back. It must have been a sleeping pill, but I think there was quite a lot in there. Mayo, too, must not have expected that there would be so much sleeping medication in it, as she said, "Oh my."
Hey, get up.
In a voice that was drastically different from her previous tone, Mary shook John with irritation. Looking at Mayo, she even raised a piercing voice, saying, "Damn it." Well, serves you right. Trusting Mayo, who suddenly appeared, and not doing your job at a crucial moment? How naive can you be? Now it's our turn. We will expose your true nature.
Gosh, if you don't wake up, our plan is ruined. We are going to steal the passbook with the inheritance from your father-in-law while Susan is asleep.
Even in this situation, Mary let out a natural remark and exposed the plan herself. Oh no, but it's too late now. Both Mayo and I were taken aback as we learned their scheme. Indeed.
What are you going to do now? I thought if I buttered up to Susan, I would inherit some wealth and our debts would be cleared.
A frustrated Mary scratching her head in irritation. Mayo is utterly shocked by her drastic change. I wonder if they really thought I wouldn't find out. It's impossible not to question the situation when one moment she's being nice and then suddenly she starts giving me a hard time.
Enough already. Our plans don't matter anyway. Please give me your husband's inheritance.
Unexpectedly, Mary bows her head obediently. Perhaps this is a strategy of direct negotiation. However, it's useless to pretend to be modest at this point. She has to fully accept the punishment for having belittled me so far. You know, do you really think I would seriously listen to such a request?
But I have been helping you out all this time. I never really wanted to live together. I put up with it because John told me we could get the inheritance.
I see. So, they have been squandering their money on gambling for a long time. I am at a loss for words. What I've realized is there's no reason for me to feel indebted to them at all. When did I ask you to live with me? You were the ones who bodged in. At the sound of my stern voice, Mary lets out a small shriek. Moreover, I know what you guys have been up to. John is addicted to gambling and deep in debt. You've been fired from your company, haven't you?
Well, why would you know that?
She probably didn't think I knew all that. Mary started trembling. I asked someone I know to look into it. And just so happens, her daughter works in the same company as you and told me everything. You stole money from the company and got caught. That's what happens when you do stupid things. Indeed, Mary was in charge of accounting and had been stealing a little money from the company every month to buy luxury goods. To the shopping addicted her, even stealing company money seemed justified. I heard your parents found out and disowned you. So, you can't rely on your supposedly wealthy family anymore. But I was surprised. I had no idea you were doing such horrible things. And you want me to give my husband's inheritance to such a person? Say that again. This time, I'll let you taste the same medicine.
No, please, I'm sorry.
Mary ran out of the room, clutching her head. I heard the front door open, and I knew she had left the house. Mayo next to me sighs in relief.
Mom, I can't believe you've been living with someone like that. I'm sorry for not doing anything until now.
No, I should apologize for not being able to take care of you when you were struggling with parenting. I thought she was an unfilial daughter when she didn't come home after a minor argument 5 years ago. But she has been caring about me. She's far better than my son, who's now lying face down after tipping over his chair. I'm moved when I think of how she came to help me today. It's thanks to her that I was able to protect my husband's inheritance.
Actually, I brought Linda too. She's close by. You'll meet her later.
Linda is my granddaughter, who was born 5 years ago. It's been 5 years since then. She must be a talkative child by now, since she's already 5 years old. I'm looking forward to it. After that, John and Mary left my house and returned to their condominium in the next town. However, I heard they were unable to pay their rent due to their debts, and had no choice but to leave the condominium. Of course, Mary wouldn't be able to return to her family, so I have no idea where they are or what they're doing now. I thought John was my precious son, but I feel relieved to have cut ties with him since he threatened my lifestyle. Instead, my daughter and granddaughter often come to visit now.
Granny, I have something for you.
What is it? Oh, you've made a flower out of paper.
Yeah, I made it at kindergarten. It's for respect for the aged day.
Thank you. I'll cherish it.
I have one for Grandpa too.
With that, Linda adorned her grandfather's picture with her paper flower. She has grown into a lively, wonderful child, and seeing her is now my greatest joy. I'm so grateful to Mayo, who saved me from John and Mary's wickedness that day, and gave me the precious gift of a grandchild.